And now for more on all the latest security developments, we welcome to studio Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Jonathan Conricus, former international spokesman for the IDF and a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, and our Middle East correspondent, Ariel Osaran. Gentlemen, thank you both so much. A developing situation. As always, the Israeli military pressure on Hamas continues, and it's very clear it will continue until the hostages are freed. Your assessment, Jonathan, on what is happening right now?
So, good evening. There's a few things that I think are noteworthy. One is that Israel has been applying military pressure now for quite a few days. We're nearing a week, and we still haven't seen the desired outcome from Hamas, as in they remain steadfast in their refusal to start negotiations again and to release Israeli hostages in a meaningful manner. That is what Israel seeks, and they remain steadfast in their demand from Israel to end the war. I must say that Envoy Witkoff's interview on Tucker Carlson won a very questionable outlet for anybody who is positively intentioned towards Israel to be on, knowing how many anti-Semites have been on that platform, one thing. And second, the tailwinds that his comments gave Hamas, I think, were not helpful, to say the least. And that is where we stand today. We have a different Israeli negotiation team with less professionals and more politicians. So far, that team is not delivering, at least based on the results that we see on the ground. And we see Hamas emboldened by Egyptian support, perhaps getting a false sense of security from the Witkoff comments, and obviously not impressed yet with Israeli maneuvers and Israeli activity on the ground. And bottom line, 59 hostages, maybe 24 of them alive, still in Hamas captivity. And last week's events have not apparently brought us close to bringing them home or to defeating Hamas.
Steve Witkoff saying that Hamas may have tricked him or duped him into thinking that it was game for a deal. These are on comments on Fox earlier on this day. Do you think he's changing his tune, reiterating that, making it very clear that the US is on the side of Israel, if there was any doubt at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the second strike, right? It's strike two. First it was Mr. Bowler, and then now it's Witkoff himself that make what I see as naive comments about who they're dealing with. And maybe we need to remind everybody who is dealing with this topic, we are dealing with bloodthirsty murderers who have no honor, have no value for truth, have no value for the sanctity of life. And to think that they are decent, that they are people that you can level with, I think is extremely naive. And maybe that is what's emanating from these interviews. I think that, we said from the beginning that it was, I think, relatively unlikely that Hamas would be impressed enough by Israeli maneuvers to actually get back to the negotiations table with the current military pressure. And that leaves Israel with the option of either to pull back and for something else to happen, or to enhance military operations and to apply more pressure. An interesting comment made by Defense Minister Katz for the first time, insinuating or saying that Israel would not only take terrain but hold it and take it out of the hands of Gaza and deliver it to Israel, which is a first such statement, and hold on to it, and that would be a punitive measure against Hamas for continuing to refuse. I haven't seen Hamas respond to it yet, and I haven't seen what kind of effect that has had. But in terms of security, we're still waiting for something to give.
And in the meantime, Ariel Osaran, the idea of confirming it has eliminated some senior figures of the terror group in recent days.
Yeah, most recently, Salah al-Baghdawil. He was head of military planning and operations for Hamas in southern Gaza. And what was interesting is that not only unofficial sources in Gaza, but Hamas itself confirmed that Baghdawil was killed while residing in a tent in the Al-Mawasi humanitarian zone. Really, they're not even hiding the fact that they're using the civilian population in Gaza as human shields. And this should be proof, or additional proof, for the international community that Hamas does not care what happens to the civilian population in the Gaza Strip, embedding themselves in an area that the civilians are supposed to be protected, knowing that they are considered legitimate targets by the IDF. That is something that should be of note to the international community. And one other note regarding the developments on the ground, the IDF issuing a statement saying that the 36th Division has been deployed to the Gaza Strip. Now, why is that important? Because that same division was deployed in Lebanon. And so we're seeing, if we talked, we've been talking a lot about the differences between this time around with regards to the ground operation in the Gaza Strip. No more gradual advancement from north to south, but we're seeing from the north, center, and south together, pretty much east to west. That is the advancement, and no more division of power. The bulk of Israeli ground forces, Air Force, are concentrating solely on the Gaza Strip. That is at least supposed to tip the scale in terms of operational capabilities that the IDF can employ on the ground and from the air.
And Jonathan, your concerns around Hamas's ability to regroup, to reinvigorate itself during the ceasefire period in recent weeks, how worried are you right now?
I'm mostly worried about their ability to enlist 17 and 18-year-old Palestinian boys and to fill their ranks of Hamas terrorists. They probably won't have a lot of time or ability to really train them and bring them up to speed in terms of tunnel operations and anti-tank operations, etc. But they will they have filled their ranks already. The big question is, how busy have they been in refurbishing tunnel infrastructure that was destroyed by Israel? And something that I think is difficult to know, have they been able to get in heavy munitions into the Gaza Strip? Most of those were destroyed by the IDF during the main months of the operation, and that it remains to be seen if Hamas has been able to get their hands on heavy munitions and if they now will be able to fire rockets towards Tel Aviv. We got kind of an answer that they fired towards central Israel, and that was intercepted. But I think that Hamas made good use of the time. They strengthened their hold on the population. And that, I think, is really what matters now. It matters less how many rockets they have. It matters how well do they control the population, how well do they control the different mechanisms that distribute food, and how entrenched are they in governing the Gaza Strip. And that, I think, hasn't really changed for the worse. If anything, Hamas has strengthened their hold on Gaza.
The words are clear. Indeed, Middle East correspondent Ariel Osaran speaking there in an exclusive interview with the former spokesman of the Houthis in Yemen, Ali al-Bukhaiti. And that was hours after this morning's Houthi missile launch towards Israel. Still in studio, Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Jonathan Conricus. Much to unpack there, many dynamics, much to discuss. Your takeaways.
First of all, I think it's a very important interview, and it's great that it's on i24, and really commendable. Second, I think this guy knows what he's talking about. He analyzes the situation in Yemen, in Israel, and in the US, and in Iran in a way that makes a lot of sense. And I think that it'll be wise to listen to his words. I think he's on the money when it comes to spotting the different trend as with regards to what the US is doing. He's piecing together US statements, US actions, and things that have been left unsaid, but that make a lot of military sense. And regarding the Houthis and how effective this aerial bombing campaign will be on them, I'm afraid that I'll have to agree with him. And I think that it won't have any very significant effect because the Houthis have endured this and much worse for many years. Whether it was Saudi planes or Emirati, now it's American, before there were a little bit of British. Israel has been involved as well, but bottom line, they do have the ability to sustain their operations and to continue to exist, hide amongst and between the civilian population, and then to fire a missile or two and to preserve their relevance. So I think that we will continue to see the Houthis being involved. They will continue to exercise this psychological terror over Israel and intimidate Israelis and force Israelis into bomb shelters. I think we shouldn't take for granted the last success of the Arrow and the other aerial interceptions that we've had. All of the missiles that have been fired lately have been intercepted. but we shouldn't be complacent. And in order to deal with the Houthis, we need to go to the source and deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Just like President Trump said, next time that the Houthis fire at us, we will see it as an attack by Iran and we will respond accordingly. I wish only that Israel would have the same policy, declare it, and then enact it.
Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Jonathan Conricus, the former international spokesman in the IDF. Hezbollah denies involvement in that rocket fire. The sirens were sounding in Metula and surrounds, regardless of who was behind it. Israel is responding.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that, I myself have said that many times. We hold the Lebanese government responsible for everything that happens in Lebanon. But the difference here is now that since the ceasefire between Israel and the state of Lebanon, but specifically with Hezbollah, what Israel has been doing is actually acting and taking measures in order to make it clear to Lebanon that we mean business and that we're not going to tolerate an encroachment of Hezbollah operatives getting back into southern Lebanon, handling weapons, and repurposing infrastructure, what's left of it in southern Lebanon. And we are definitely not going to tolerate rocket fire or any other type of aggression and infringement on Israeli safety and sovereignty. That is different because for many years we talked, but we didn't act. Hezbollah understood that. Hezbollah understood Israel's aversion from action. They put tents across the border, they infiltrated into Israel, they did all kinds of provocations, and they were met with very little resistance, and as such, they kept on going. What Israel is doing now is consistently marking to Hezbollah, to the Lebanese authorities, and to the negotiators where the parameters are and what we are going to allow and not to allow. And that's a good thing. But we must say, on the ground, the situation is still one of unfinished business. Hezbollah still has assets in southern Lebanon, and plenty, and they still have lots of combat troops, terrorists, that are ready to combat, and they still have the ability to conduct military operations. So even with this new Israeli policy, there still is lots of unfinished business. This brings me back to what we spoke about before, the Houthis. The common denominator and the source of all of the instability in the region is the Islamic Republic of Iran. And instead of butting heads and tactical activity against that or whatever activity that Hezbollah or others are doing in Lebanon, what we should be doing is focusing on the Islamic Republic to apply pressure, military, economic, information and other types of pressure in order to impress upon them that if they continue to fire, if they continue to support, they continue to fund, the consequences will be on Iranian soil. Until we do that, we'll continue to have to deal with Houthis and with Hezbollah and with Hamas and Islamic Jihad and others.